All right, welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame right here in Canton, Ohio, at the most inspiring place on earth. My name is Jake Ray, and I'm the Youth and Education Manager here. I am excited to bring you another installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series. If you're a returning watcher, thank you so much for doing so and watching these great programs. We were bummed we missed out last week with all the Super Bowl and everything going on, but we're excited to be back this week to bring you guys another excellent program. Now, if this is the first time you've watched us, you guys are in for a treat. This program is here to showcase all the different careers in and around the NFL. And today we get the cool experience to kind of focus on the football side of an NFL organization rather than the business side. So we're really looking forward to today, and I hope everybody who's watching this live on Facebook is as well. A little bit about us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our mission is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. Those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which not only make our Hall of Famers Hall of Fame football players, but they make them Hall of Fame dads, Hall of Fame coaches, brothers, sons, whatever it might be. And it also makes a great employee of any organization, specifically one involved in the NFL and involved in sports. I'm excited today to see how those values affected our special guest and his career leading up to his role now with our hometown Cleveland Browns here in Northeast Ohio. Before we get started, first, I'd like to thank our special guest, who's going to be Tyler Hamblin today. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. And thank you for everything you do for the game of football. It definitely doesn't go unnoticed, and we're so appreciative of everything you do for the game and you do for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, even though you might not know, you do a lot of for us, here at the Hall of Fame. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators, educators, principals, whoever it might be, who allowed us to be a part of your classroom today. We know this school year has been treacherous and it's been hard with all the different learning types. We just appreciate you allowing us to be a small part of that and showcase all the different careers in and around the NFL to your students. And then lastly, I'd like to thank our students. Without you guys today, this program doesn't happen. I'm excited to see what questions that you guys have today. And the way we get to hear those questions is if you comment on the Facebook stream right now. I need you guys to come. I got my Nathan, who you guys have heard before. He's watching this Facebook stream in our Gold Jacket Lounge and is going to pull all the great questions that we have for the program. All we'll need you to do is put your name, the school you go to, where you're coming from, and your question, and we'll do our best to make it a part of the program. Make sure you guys are coming. We want to see where everybody's coming from. Throw your school name in there, your alma mater, whatever it might be. We want to see where all of our viewers are watching from today. So make sure you guys are putting down your questions in that comment section throughout the program today. Lastly, I'd like to welcome our special guest today, Tyler Hamblin. Hamblin is in his fourth season with the Cleveland Browns and his first as the football operations coordinator. In his role, he assists the personnel, research, and player development departments, and his responsibilities include advanced scouting on upcoming opponents, evaluating professional and college football players, so he's probably had a busy last couple weeks here, and various contributions to processes all across the football operations side of the team. Prior to joining the Browns, Hamblin spent 2 years as a teacher and assistant football coach in his hometown of Syracuse, New York, and in Baltimore, Maryland. Hamblin earned his bachelor's degree in sociology from Harvard in 2015, where he was a 4-year football player. He earned an Ivy League championship in 2011, 2013, and 2014, and was awarded the Henry H. Lamar Award given to the senior Harvard football player for their dedication to their teammates and the program. So without further ado, enough of me talking. Let's welcome our special guest today, Mr. Tyler Hamblin of the Cleveland Browns. Tyler, welcome.
Jake, it's a pleasure. Thank you for your kind words and the kind introduction. I play a very, very small role in this game. This game is given to me much more than I could ever give back to it. So I'm glad to be here and share a little bit about my experience.
Well, let's just jump right in there using that, because it is a very unique experience for yourself. Being, a lot of people are athletes growing up, but you've had the experience not only in high school, but then in college, and then to work in the NFL and the game of football, even being a coach. So what does the game mean to you? And what are some of the life lessons you've taken away from the game that help you in your job and your current role now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the game has been a part of my life since I was 5 years old. I played Pop Warner football, high school, college, and was not talented enough to play in the professional level, but loved the game so much that I wanted to do this as a career. And so when I think about what the game has taught me relevant to the professional world is really one, teamwork. Obviously, you have 10 other guys, 11 total on your unit playing against 11 other. You have to work together. You have to do your part and do your job. And I think the other piece is overcoming adversity. Like there were a ton of times that I learned to beat down and have to fight through and fight to come back and figure out ways to overcome or play against better competition and better talent. And you learn to persevere and push through and overcome and lean on your teammates. And in the professional world translates to lean on your colleagues to hold up your end and kind of overcome any stress or adversity that you face. I think those are the two biggest things that kind of live within me as I move forward in my life.
Yeah, and I think football provides that unique opportunity. You mentioned, it's not really, if you can do the job, you're going to be in the huddle. And that's the same thing. You're just going to be in the boardroom when it comes to, or in the coaching office when it comes to working with an NFL team. And you're right, the game of football is unique where it can teach all those life lessons. And it doesn't matter, what college you went to, where you grew up, what street you grew on, what your last name is. If you're one of the best ones that can do the job, you're going to be there to provide for your team. And I think, having that experience is well, I'm in the same boat. I wasn't even good enough to make it to college to play football. So, I retired young, but football, has always been a part of my life and, sports in general. And I think the life lessons that, the game, no matter what you play, can teach are super, super important.
Yeah. And I think it's such a common thing where like we grow up playing sports, living in sports, and then one day it just stops and you have to sit back and reflect on what you're possibly going to do. And I think one of the cool things that I actually didn't know when I was a young person, it took me a while until kind of my second career, what I actually found out was that this could be an actual career. And so I'm super grateful that I have this opportunity, and I always try to, give back and give thanks for it.
Absolutely. So let's dive into your career. You kind of went over a little bit, football operations coordinator. Can kind of go a bunch of different ways depending on, what you do on a day-to-day basis. There's the football side and the scouting. When you hear operations, you think logistics and travel. So on a day-to-day basis as a football operations coordinator, what does your day look like?
Yeah, so on the local level, to me specifically, like I am at my kind of core a scout and work with the personnel group. I was one of the advanced scouts with the Cleveland Browns. I help contribute to our evaluations for professional players, as you said. I do a little bit of college evaluations, and I really put all my time and energy there. I think zooming back with the title of football operations coordinator, that's a little more just kind of like logistics and red tape of what that title is. But I do think people from the outside don't realize how many resources we put into supporting our team, supporting our players to try to get the most out of them. And so in my role, I play a very small part in helping support them, helping work with those various groups like our research team to prepare for make sure we have the best in-game strategy, with our player development team to make sure those guys on Sunday who don't necessarily get all the snaps are still growing and developing and trying to reach their ceiling and their potential. And so ultimately that's what I do. And it's a hodgepodge of things. Sometimes I'm throwing downstairs for a free agent tryout. Sometimes I'm at my computer all night playing around and toying around with an Excel sheet. It's diverse. So every day can look a little bit different. And I like that. I enjoy it. And I'm really grateful to play a small part in our organization.
And, talking about that, because that resonates a lot with us here, especially in our youth education department, how the day-to-day doesn't really look the same each day. To you, why is that an important part of your job? And why is it something that you enjoy?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is like my job exists and people like me exist to support the 53-man roster and support the team. And that was a really big lesson I had to learn as a young person. And so I try to strive myself to be a servant leader, to roll up my sleeves, to be willing to do whatever is needed for the team. Like this year, we finally had some success on the field, and that was awesome. But whether we do or don't, like our guys go out there and they put their bodies on the line. They fight and work all week long. And so I just try to reciprocate that in the small way that I do during the week, whether that be supporting and, throwing some DBs in practice, whether it be to help assist our research team on some kind of preparation for our opponent, looking at information. And you really, really have to always remember that we're here for the team. No individual is bigger than the team or the organization. And so having that servant leadership mindset has really helped me in my career.
And I think that's another lesson. You're saying a lot of things that you hear in the locker room too. And I think that's one of those lessons you can pull from that. Now that you've told everybody kind of what you do, the next question we like to follow up is, well, why do you do it? Everybody can go get a job and, work 9 to 5, come home, go to the work, have the weekends off, just like a normal employee. But if you really love what you do, they say never work a day in your life. So at the basis of it, why do you love being the football operations coordinator with the Browns?
Yeah, ultimately, I love the sport. I love the sport. I've loved it since I was a young child, and I continue to love it to this day. And as I've kind of matured in my life and my interests have expanded, one thing that I learned is there's different ways you can look at the sport. You don't necessarily have to look at it solely as a player. I can look at it at a high level on some team building and roster building. I can look at it in a kind of a strategic way. I can look at it in a development way, how to work with people, how to help contribute to another person's growth and potential. And so one thing this role provides me is a diverse way to engage with the sport and engage with the sport that has given me a ton in my life.
All right, we're going to go out to Nathan Martin, Youth and Education Coordinator here at the Hall of Fame, who's in our Gold Jacket Lounge, monitoring those Facebook questions, who's got his first question ready to go for Tyler. So Nathan, floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, for sending it out here. And Tyler, you've told us, what you're doing, in football ops as a coordinator there for the Browns. But I want to backtrack it a little bit with my question. But before I do that, I would encourage the students. I've counted. We've got like 15 plus different schools represented in our Facebook comments. Keep sending those in, but send in the questions too. Tyler wants to hear from you. We want to hear from you. So please send in your questions for Tyler. But my question for you, Tyler, is, when we read your bio, it says that you were a teacher for a while before you were with the Browns. And do you think that experience in education kind of helps you today now working in the NFL?
Absolutely, it does. When you're a teacher, there are a million different problems you have to solve every single day, and that's transferable to any industry that you get in. Teachers are relentless workers. They are very smart the way they think about solving different things. They're creative in the way they use their resources, and all those things apply to contributing to an organizational success. Sometimes we have a problem with how are we going to figure out who's going to start where, and to think about them creatively, to figure out how all the pieces fit together. Teachers manage classrooms, and on a different level, we try to manage the roster and get the roster to be in the optimal arrangement, much like teachers try to manage their classroom and arrange it optimally. So I think that is super beneficial. I think, understanding how people learn is really important. I'm not a coach, but in football broadly, when you are a coach, you have to teach something effectively. And so understanding how other people grasp information is really, really important. In my small role, we try to create resources so our players can learn things effectively. We try to supplement some of the stuff that the coaches do. And having a little bit of that background has helped me contribute in just a small way of the overall picture.
I think that's awesome how you see your previous experience helping you in what you're doing today. And we do have our first Facebook question from a student. This is from Tyus. He's a student at UNLV, and he says, how does somebody who didn't play college football find the working opportunities to kind of break into the NFL?
Yeah. So I think before I answer Tyus's question, one thing I do want to add is all experiences are beneficial and can help you get into a role you want to do. No matter what it is, no matter how foreign it may seem, if you look at it on kind of a high level, at a skills level, there are things transferable, and that's what you bring to a position. So, me, I bring that teacher background. I bring a little bit of that understanding of how people learn, and that's different than some of my colleagues, and we kind of fit together and work it out. So to kind of get to Ty's question, I think one, learn and develop as much as you can as a person, because ultimately in the NFL, we want good people, we want talented people. And so even though you didn't play, there's a space for you. My boss didn't play in my direct report, he didn't play football. There were a lot of people in the organization who I look up to who didn't necessarily play football. But one thing they did do is really push themselves to learn as much as they could about the game. They brought their unique perspective to the game and tried to apply it and really tried to hone it as best they could to communicate to others that, like, hey, this is just the way I see the game, which may be different than a former professional player, a former college player, a former coach, but it's all valued the same. And so I really would push Tyus and others like him who kind of think like, hey man, how can I get in? I never played, to like engage in the game, watch the game, study the game, read about the game, try to think about the game in a different way based on your previous experiences.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for Tyus. And like you said, other students who might be in a similar position. And you talked about the organization and the industry wanting good people. I'm going to send it back to a great person in the industry, Jake Gray, and he'll continue the interview with you this afternoon.
Well, I appreciate that, Nathan. Thank you. And that was one thing, Tyler, you talked about there is, you had the experience being a college football player and even a high school coach that kind of gave you that resume builder. Say, I've spent a lot of time in the game. The cool thing about, your job, or maybe not cool, is that you can't like go to college and major in football operations. So, with that experience, you have to kind of say, well, is this a job I'm interested in? How do I break into the industry? So for you, you major in sociology, you're a teacher and a coach, and then you end up working in the NFL. So how did your networking, because that's such a buzzword in college nowadays, how did your networking and relationship building help you get to the position you're at today?
Yeah, it's critical. It's key. I would not be where I am today if I did not network and did not lean on that network. I think the first thing you want to do is whatever you're in, you want to do as best as you can. And so when I was a player, like nobody came and looked at me and was like, oh, have you ever thought about working in it? I actually just, pushed myself, tried to do the best I could. I brought intelligence to the game. I was not all that athletic. And my coach kind of identified like, hey, you might want to think about this. And so what I ultimately did was lean on his network. I asked him to introduce me to people so I could learn on the field. When I went to teach, I originally did not agree to coach. I just kind of fell into it. I built a relationship and explored and volunteered my time over there and kind of grew and tried to learn as much as I could about the industry to get back to it and get back to it in a full-time capacity. So I think, whatever you're in, do the best you can. If you have a small network, lean on others who have a broader network. Put yourself out there as much as you can. And it's a pretty scary thing. Like, I'm not a big networker. I still shy away from it from time to time, but I do think like all you put into it, more will come back your way. And a little bit of risk goes a long, long way with just like, hey, there's a school down the street. I go to this university, I study economics, but there's a school down the street with a football team. Maybe they could use my help. And you never know who that head football coach knows, or you never know what assistant coach knows somebody somewhere else. And that can kind of metastasize into something larger. And then you can hit the ground running and find your dream job, if you will, or the spot you ultimately want to be in.
I think that's great advice, because you don't know, who that person knows. I kind of was in the same boat. I was never somebody who wanted to kind of put my neck out there and go talk to somebody because they were busy. They don't want to talk to this college sophomore who doesn't know anything about anything yet. But I think that's something, looking back, that's something I wish I would have, taken advantage of. And that's one of the reasons we want to do a program like this, is to not only showcase all the different careers, but provide a networking opportunity with different career professionals, around the game. Flash back a little bit before that, you go back to high school. Obviously being an athlete, you kind of have that urge to work in sports. Some people do, some people don't. But in high school, it's tough to find, that niche of what you want to do. So say there's somebody in high school right now watching this program that might not know what they want to do, might have an idea. What would some advice be to them to kind of pick that career field that would best suit them?
Yeah. One, pursue what you love. Like you have to love what you're going to do. And I think a key thing that I learned is it's not good enough to just love a piece of the larger work. You have to love what you're actually going to get up every single day and do. And that's going to motivate you to kind of persevere through those trying moments. So I would push people to pursue their true passions and be honest with themselves. What are their true passions? I think the second thing I would say is volunteer your time. When you're young, one of your biggest assets is time. And even though like I would still consider myself a young person, I know when I look at my hairline, it may not indicate it, but I think if I could look back on being young, I would put myself out there and try some things. I would try to volunteer. I would try to shadow. I would explore a little more, because I think it's easy to think like, hey, I'm going to go through high school, go through college, maybe a little post grad, and then an epiphany is going to happen. I'm going to go like, that's it. That's exactly what I want to do. And it's a longer process. And so I would kind of leverage that time to explore and to think and to try. And, even if it's failure's not necessarily bad. And even if you do something and realize like, hey, that's not for me, it's going to be much better that you tried it when you were 16, 17, rather than when you're 23 and you're finally on your own and you're like, okay, I have to pay all my bills now and support myself. I really think you'll, like, looking back, that's something I wish I did more often.
Yeah, I think it's true. And I think a key message is that, when you're 16 or 17, you don't have to have it figured out.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to try all these different things and, find what you want to do. But like you said, more importantly, find, that's not for me. I'm going to stay away from that. So, even go into that knowing that it's going to take some time, and it might not be when you're the first thing you do. It might be when you're a junior or senior in college. So you finally find that one thing. But in order to find it, you've got to try all these different experiences and different, like you said, volunteer opportunities. Nathan's got sent me a message, and Nathan's got another question ready to go. It seems like a very popular question as well. So we're going to throw it back out to Nathan.
Yeah, Jay, thanks for that. And it is a popular question. So I can't give all the students credit that have asked the question because so many of you have, and keep sending in your questions. But I'm going to kind of combine the question to make it one concise question for you, Tyler. And it's kind of, the NFL experienced a season like none other with the virtual aspect this year, and they made it through, and the Buccaneers hosted the Lombardi Trophy. But, if I'm a student in college and I'm trying now to apply and break in, how can I separate myself in the virtual world from other students? Thomas from Butler University is talking about maybe trying to break into scouting, MC's trying to break into accounting. Ethan just asked the general question from Villanova. How do I stand out? So that's the question. How can these students, regardless if it's counting, it's scouting, it's football ops, how can they stand out in this virtual world of searching for internships and entry-level jobs?
Yeah, I totally hear that question. And the advice that I would give is like, when you approach or reach out to somebody or a connection you have, one thing you want to demonstrate is that like you've actually done a little bit of work and a little bit of exploring about who they are, what they've done, and maybe even demonstrate like some true interest and show that you have a little skin in the game. So if I'm a young scout who's trying to break in, like I want to demonstrate that I've done a little bit of scouting work. Maybe I just want to send a little bit of work samples of like, hey, here are some reports for the upcoming 2021 free agent class or draft class that I've taken the time to do a little bit. Even if it's not a big name, like I've worked with students back in the Ivy League, and I was like, do evaluations on players, even if they're not actually pro prospects. Demonstrate the way that you think. And I think that's something that people in the industry really value, is when they see others put a little bit of skin in the game. So do a little bit of research on the person you're reaching out to, their background, where they come from, where if there could possibly be any connection points. When I get messages on LinkedIn, if someone says like, hey, so-and-so, and I've also crossed their paths, whether you're their best friend or you just literally have crossed their path, I'm more likely to read that message and I'm more likely to respond. Because one thing you do have to acknowledge and be cognizant of is that a lot of people do want to break into this industry, and that a lot of information comes at people. In any single way you can stand out, through showing you have skin in the game, through showing another networking connection, can really, really go a long way.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And you mentioned the connections on LinkedIn. I know we've posted the link to your LinkedIn on this Facebook video. So
Awesome.
hopefully all these students that are asking questions, they'll connect with you and they'll say, hey, Tyler, I saw you on Before the Snap with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's get connected. But, you know, you've talked a little bit about your career, and something we try to do in all of these programs is incorporate the museum. Because here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we are a museum. We're here to, honor the heroes of the game, preserve the history of the game, promote the values, and celebrate excellence everywhere. So we're going to send it out now to the Director of Youth and Education, Jerry Shockey. He's live in our museum, and he's got a question for you, Tyler, based on some stuff that we have on display. Jerry, you there?
Yes, I am. Nathan, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
Perfect. And so, yeah, we're here in the museum. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Tyler. And thank you to all the high school, college students, and beyond that are tuned in here from today from universities all across the country. Welcome to the second floor of the Rotunda, where we highlight some of the most recent, most iconic moments from the game's history. Today, I'm standing in front of a very old equipment crate from the Duluth Eskimos. Actually, after the team drafted Hall of Famer Ernie Nevers in 1926, they changed the name of the team to the Ernie Never Eskimos. Now get this, think about this for a second. That team in 1926 used this travel crate that you see behind me, used the travel crate as they went on a barnstorming tour that covered 17,000 miles, saw them play 28 of their 29 games on the road. Now I'm standing here today because when I think of the title, football operations, this is what I typically think of. I think of arranging hotels, travel, food, all those kind of things. And I noticed in your job description or in your bio that you didn't have those things listed in there. So I was curious if that's part of your job or if that's someone in your department that takes care of those things. So I know it's an integral part of the team's day-to-day operations.
Yeah, it's huge. It is someone in my department and in our organization who's more responsible for that. We're at a point now where a lot of the things that you described are splintered off. Like, we have an equipment department unto themselves. We have a travel department entirely to themselves. And so it is a big shop. Like, we have, our players need a lot to be at their best, and we try to do everything we can to support them. Our equipment guys do all they can to make sure our guys have the safest and the best equipment possible. And so they really focus on there. Our travel guys want to make sure our guys are comfortable, their legs are fresh, and they're ready to go when we got to go to Pittsburgh on Sunday. Even though it's a close bus ride, like, we still want them to be at their best and don't take that for granted. And so that is a little bit different. I see those guys, I work with those guys. I would say a little more informally than kind of anything formal on the equipment end. When we are hosting a free agent workout, we may do a little bit of coordinating and collaborating there. But I would say, in their primary role and responsibilities, I don't have much day-to-day interaction, but I surely do see it. And our organization surely does appreciate it. And it is a key thing for a successful franchise.
Yeah, I just think about that, Tyler, and I'm like, the 49ers did a video for us not too long ago, and the guy that interviewed is actually the logistics manager as well, and they said they book about 200 rooms when they travel. It's amazing. Trying to coordinate that. So it's obviously a critical job to the everyday operations of the team. So thank you, Tyler. Nathan, Jake, I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Appreciate you coming live from the museum for us today. Always a cool thing where we can incorporate our museum. And even though, Tyler's job doesn't have anything to do with travel and logistics like that big Ernie Nevers trunk we shown, he did mention 2 or 3 other different careers that you can get into and be involved with an NFL organization. And, speaking about the team in a little bit, the Browns, and this is known all throughout the NFL, Browns fans are some of the most loyal that there are. And I'm sure you've seen that in your 4 years, because you've experienced the lowest of the lows, the highest of the highs, specifically looking at last year as the highest of the highs for sure. So not only that atmosphere, and I guess this is kind of a 2-part question, does the atmosphere or your job, does it kind of shift? Can you feel a shift depending on team success? And then on the second part of that is, when the team is on the field, what is some of your jobs, quote unquote, before the snap or, behind the scenes?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, absolutely. Do you uh, uh, feel the energy, whether it be good or bad, depending on how the team's performance is? I think that's one thing getting into this industry, people should and have to prepare themselves for, is that this is a bottom line industry, and you will be held accountable for the product on the field and for the performance of the players on the field. And we don't want to be the reasons that they're not at their best. And so when that is the case, things do happen, and the game is emotional, and we do feel that on Mondays after poor performances, but we also feel that in a positive way, like Mondays after great performances, after upsetting Pittsburgh on the road. That's an awesome feeling, and not something you can get in other workspaces. So there's give and take, like in all roles. So I think, uh, to your second question, my work and my responsibility typically happens between Monday to Saturday. In scouting, in my role in football operations, I don't have much work to do on Sundays. I want to make sure I've done my best from Monday to Saturday so that the team is in the best situation, so that we've looked at all the possibilities for who could be on our roster for that game week, that we've done our best to evaluate the players we're going to have opportunities to acquire in the future, whether it be free agency or draft, whether I've given the best information to our coaches for the advanced scouting process, whether I've helped support whatever other functions the organization has for me that week. So during the game, I'm not quite a fan, but I do largely observe and just watch. I will say after the game, I go back to work and I start evaluating and I start looking at how players performed, how we did as a group, things I think we can improve on, and start gathering some of that information. As soon as games, if we have a 1 o'clock game, that means a whole other, and we end at 4, that means a whole other bunch of teams ended at 4. So I want to get on that film as early as possible and start gathering some more information and hunting it down. So when I do get the luxury of just watching a bit, I'm a good deal tense while things are happening. But yeah. So that is, I guess that's a luxury of scouting, where you do enjoy Sundays, and First Energy is a great place to enjoy those Sundays in.
So we know this season was different than any other NFL season before, with the pandemic and having all these different protocols,
Yeah.
and finding out Saturday afternoon that you're not going to have players on Sunday. So, you look in the Browns specifically, you go back to their game where they had no wide receivers, offensive linemen, tight ends were all out, and head coaches are out. For you and your department, when that news comes through, is there a rush to go, all right, here's our next 5 or 6 options. Here's where we think we can go with this direction. So not only how'd that experience, affect you and the Cleveland organization, but as an NFL as a whole, having to adjust all to these new protocols, due to the pandemic.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sacrifice that went on across the league, of people in their individual lives, from kind of the entry level positions to senior management, who kind of had to go out of their way to make sure we were staying safe, to make sure that we weren't the reasons that our players possibly weren't healthy. And so we try to hold ourselves accountable in that regard. I think, when that situation happened, it definitely, pushed us to be creative and to think outside the box. But I really think, the good organizations and what we strive to be is we want to be prepared for those type of things. We know we can't account for all possible scenarios. Like, we did not forecast that we would lose a position group for a game, or we would lose a head coach for a game. But what we did want to do is make sure that, like, when we're called upon and like, hey, we need to fill this roster with bodies to make sure we're ready to go for Sunday, that we had names down, that we had people in mind, that we had an understanding of who we could possibly be bringing in to the organization. It was all hands on deck. There were things that, like, in my typical role, I wouldn't be asked to do, but in those situations, we just needed somebody. We needed somebody to make a phone call. And so, my number was called if you were, and I had to step up. And I think our group did the best we could, and really did a great job in those adverse and trying times, to help support those guys who were healthy and who were able to make it out, and make sure that, when guys got back like Joe Platonio, that we still helped them get in a situation to play in the playoffs. A veteran who's been through a lot and was, very glad to see he was able to play in a playoff game for us.
I think that's important. And I want to go back to something you said before. You said, your job takes place Monday to Saturday. And, and that's another reason why we want to do this program is to showcase, because the fans see that final product on Sunday. They think, awesome, another game, another Sunday, 1 p.m. kickoff. Let's watch Cleveland play. But there's so much that goes into, and then you look at a situation when that occurs and it's like, all right, they're starting a guy I've never heard of before in the slot and they're playing defensive backs on offense. To the normal fan, that just looks like, oh, they just had to adjust. But, you look at a job like yours and all the last second adjustments and phone calls and meetings and tryouts that you had to go through. There is a lot that goes through that Monday to Saturday timeframe. I know Nathan's got some other questions. He's got a couple ready to go. So I'm going to send it back out to the Gold Jacket Lounge here in Canton to Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, for doing that again. And we got a question from Madison. She attends the University of Kentucky. And you kind of already touched on her first part, breaking into the NFL, how to separate yourself in the interview process or on the resume or the cover letter. But I think the second half of her question was really interesting because I'm somebody, I majored in business and sport management. They tell you in school, hey, the easiest way to break into sports, go into sales. And you're like, what if I don't love sales? How do I get to what I love? So I think that's kind of her question. How, you break in, but how do you make sure you're doing what you love? And then I would challenge you or ask you, Tyler, where do you see yourself going in the next 4 or 5 years? Are you doing what you love, in football operations? And I don't think it's a slam on your position if you're saying, no, I've got a goal to do this in the next 5 years. So kind of like, how do you get to what you love? And then if you're not there, how can you continue to develop so you can get there one day?
Yeah. To answer Madison's first question, I would say take your professional development seriously. If you get your foot in the door, that's great. And even if your foot in the door isn't something you absolutely love initially, take serious the opportunity to learn and grow as a professional. So one thing we try to do at the Browns is push all of our employees to explore and to learn as much about the thing that really, really motivates them and really, really something that they're really, really interested in. So if you get in sales and you know from jump, like, I don't love sales, this isn't a long-term solution, take seriously, like, how can I learn and how can I prove? How can I build a bridge to those other departments that would actually fulfill me? What relationships can I build? What skills do I need and do I lack? Like, before I was in this role, I didn't have a lot of data skills, but I kind of built a bridge with some of our data team and found out, hey, what do I need to know? Because at the time I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I didn't know I was raw with programming. And so, I've tried to push the bounds of what I could do. I've tried to take seriously my professional development and learn and grow in my role. And so I would push others to embrace the journey a little bit. Once you're in this industry, it can be a ride. Things come up that, like, you would not expect to. We've had a lot of changes in Cleveland. This is the first year we're not going to have big turnover. And so there's a little bit of stability, but in the past, I thought I was going down one trajectory and then things changed. And it, 2 weeks later, my life and my path forward looked a little bit differently. So embrace a little bit of that and push yourselves. Can you remind me the second piece of that question? Where I want to go?
The second piece is just kind of where do you want to go? Are you at where you want to be, or what's the next 4 or 5 years look like for you?
Yeah, I think kind of building on that thing of it's hard to tell a lot of times. It's hard in the role that I'm in, given how fluid the industry can be. I'm not exactly sure. I know what I want to do is I want to support the organization the best I can. I want to help the organization make the best decisions possible. I don't necessarily want to make those decisions, but I want to help build processes that ensure good outcomes, that push ourselves, that push others. I want to be a part of a really good team that strives to be the Buccaneers, that strives to have success like Tom Brady did. I want to be a part of a club that does that. So I don't know where that's going to take me, but I know that's what drives me, that's what motivates me, and that's what I'm most interested in. And so for those young professionals who have an internship that in a role that they didn't necessarily dream of, push yourself to those types of things. What does motivate you? What does inspire you? And try to learn as much on that terrain.
Yeah, that's awesome. Got another question here. This is from Finn from Villanova University. And Finn says, you've got that background now in scouting, and you talked about analytics being maybe an area of weakness that you're kind of developing and getting better at. But kind of what's your opinion on the role that analytics plays in football and roster management and decisions that are being made? So not necessarily a career question, but just, a good football question.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. In the year 2021, we have so much technology. We live in a world of data. Every time we turn on Netflix functions as kind of a little bit of a data collection company. We're live here on Facebook, which is collecting a ton of data on us. And that's a piece of the game. And our industry is not, we're not insulated from that. And so I do think it's going to be a huge part of football moving forward. The game is never going to be played with numbers. It's never going to be played with percentages. It's never going to be played with computer programs or statistical algorithms. It's always going to be played with our players and people, and it's going to be emotional, but there is a lot of information out there. And I think smart teams leverage it, smart teams explore it, and that is the forefront of where we're going. It's not going to replace us. Machines aren't going to take over the sport, and it's going to kind of be a dry thing, but it is something that we have to work with and we have to embrace. And so, like you said, data is a weakness for me. I was a little math averse as a student. I did not like to take math classes, but in a professional space, I've embraced it a little bit because I'm familiar with it. I kind of understand the topics that it's exploring. I get a little bit of the football behind the numbers. And so I'm trying to grow there. And so I would push all young professionals to have a little bit of that in your arsenal, even if you don't major in it.
Yeah. I think from what you just said there, that to me stuck out. You acknowledge somewhere where maybe it's not a strength, and you kind of just outline ways that you're trying to improve that. And I think regardless if you're a student, if you're a young professional like myself, Jake, that's something that everybody can learn from. Like, figure out what is maybe a weakness for you, and then create a plan of action on how to improve that. And maybe it never becomes a strength, but it will no longer be a weakness for you. And I think that's just awesome to hear from you. And, it's encouraging for me when I self-evaluate myself. But guys, keep sending in the questions. We got another 10 minutes or so. Maybe we'll be able to get you in, but I'm going to send it back to Jake for a couple of questions.
All right, thanks, Nathan. And, kind of off of that, strength versus weaknesses, the goal when you come into an interview for whatever position it might be, they're going to ask you, what do you consider your strengths? Or what do you consider your weaknesses? And the thing, to kind of give you an inside look to everybody watching on our side of the table when we're interviewing somebody, is we want to hear what those strengths and weaknesses are, but we want to hear how your experiences has helped build those. We want to hear how you're trying to turn those weaknesses into strength. So, looking at a topic like that, what are some things, for somebody who's trying to break into sports or break into a scouting career, what are some, some topics, some recommendations that you would give to those individuals who are looking kind of separate themselves from everybody else?
Yeah. So one, I think, you do have to be, if you're trying to break into a particular area of football, you want to have a mastery of it and you want to understand it as best as you can. And so I would push people to focus on that. Like, if you want to break in as a scout, it's great to know data, but you don't necessarily want to just only focus on how data and scouting work together. So I would push people to always kind of, master your craft as best as you can. But I do think some of these things that can accentuate you are really good. Understanding how data and football intersect is really good. Understanding asset management and contract management and player salary and the collective bargaining is really, really important. Understanding how scheme and how players fit on the field and what a high-level football scheme can ask of different guys. Having a little bit of a historical knowledge of what plays well at certain positions, what doesn't, that precedent can be really beneficial. I think all of this is to say, again, like, push your mastery and your understanding of it, even from the outside. There's growing public information out there on things all across the organization, whether it be data, whether that be equipment, whether that be scouting, whether that be coaching. Talk to people as best you can. And I think all that stuff all those different aspects can really make you a standout candidate when, once again, you've kind of shown that you put a little skin and made a little bit of investment in this profession.
I think the cool thing to take away from that is you mentioned probably a dozen different jobs that each of those skills pertains to. But if you come in as a well-rounded person, you may not get that dream job, but you're going to come in with the skills in your free time to say, hey, any help you guys need, I'm here to help. Here's what I know how to do. Here's what I can offer to the table. And I think that that's key. Something that you try and do always as an intern or an entry level is to kind of broaden your horizon and help as much people as possible, not only to gain the experience and gain the network, but to help better yourself. And that kind of leads me into my next question here. Is we talked a little bit about that work behind the scenes. So you obviously do a lot of work that not a lot of people see, and that's not a knock on you. It's just the profession. So is there something, or is there one thing that stands out to you that people might not know or might not see that you're most proud of, or a work moment that you can kind of, when you sit back at the end of the day, you go, that was a pretty good move by me?
Yeah, I do. I want to double down on that point of, for people who want to get into sports, like, the glory goes to the players, and that we are here behind the scenes, before the snap, doing the work. And we want that glory to stay on our players, because they work really hard. They put their bodies on the line, and they are as talented at what they do as anybody in whatever type of skill. And so we really want to pride ourselves. People in this industry do. And I think people who want to break in should pride themselves on a servant leadership mentality, to roll up their sleeves and be comfortable with doing all that work. And so I think one thing that I'm super proud of is, in a limited capacity, I work with an intern who's external, who does a little bit of work with us. And I've developed a pretty good relationship with her. And she is she's applying to the Ohio State bar. She does work with us just on the side, and asked me to be a reference. And I thought I was really proud of that moment, because it kind of demonstrates I felt finally like a good teammate. And a lot of our work, I sit at a computer a good deal of my day. I do kind of tasks that don't necessarily call for a lot of engagement with others, but are needed for a bigger picture that kind of bring the whole thing together when we can come together as a group and make decisions. But I was really proud of that moment. And I think, something you said before in your previous statement is, we want good people, and things like that do go a long way. We want good teammates. Even if your role, someone asks you to, like, hey, you're going to sort this piece of equipment, and it may not seem like you're working with someone directly, but that goes into an interaction. A player is going to need that. A coach is going to need that piece of equipment to make our guys better. And so we want good people. We want people who pride themselves on, being open to others, being compatible and collaborative. And so when that person asked me that, I was super honored and grateful to feel a little bit of that acknowledgement that, like, hey, yeah, I was a good teammate.
That's awesome. So, we look at, behind the scenes, off the field moments that are special. So let's flip that to, on the field. So we've got, working in sports, you get to do some pretty cool things that not everybody gets to do. So there's a moment, this can be high school, college with the Browns now. Is there a moment that stands out to you as kind of the coolest moment that you've gotten to be a part of, whether it's a win on the Browns win when Baker came in on Thursday night, whether it's, the Browns success that you had last year, beating Pittsburgh, making it to the playoffs, getting the win there. What is that moment that stands out to you as, kind of special?
Yeah, it would be with the Browns. It would be that Thursday night win when Baker kind of came in and Tyrod went down, and we're a little weary. We hadn't won a game. I had not won a game as a member of the organization. That was my second year. And so kind of when Baker came in, and that moment felt super redeeming, because there was so much work that went in to his draft pick, to Denzel's draft pick, to that entire class, that it was really, really great to see. And so that was something that I'm super, super proud of. I still have a photo of it with my fiance after the win that I really cherish. And so that's something that I look back and super fond of. And honestly, it's up there with some of my on-field accomplishments. I played on a good football team in college. I played with Cam Brate, who's now a Super Bowl champion at Harvard. We had some success there, but that went on Thursday night, and the work that all those guys put in and the hardships that they had the year before, going 0-16 with a lot of bad luck our way, that was something that really, really was great to experience.
Yeah, no, I think for all Browns fans, I think they can echo that statement from you when it comes to that. We got time for a few more questions. I'm going to send it back out to Nathan Martin for one last one from him. And then after he's done, he'll throw it back to me and we'll wrap it up. So Nathan, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, for sending out here one last time. And the question I have for you, Tyler, so before I ask it, I got to give, some publicity to us here at the Hall of Fame. It's about internships. We still are looking for summer interns. The deadline is February 15th. So we're sitting here, it's February 12th. So you've got a couple more days to get your application in, get your resume in. There's about a dozen different internship opportunities here, over 7 or 8 different departments. So go ahead, students, if you're interested, go ahead, apply for those. And then the question was from Thomas from Butler University. And he's just curious, Tyler, what kind of internships do the Browns offer in a normal year? It might be different with COVID. You even mentioned that the person you've kind of been working with has kind of been remote and virtual. So what kind of opportunities do the Browns offer, and maybe just NFL teams in general as far as internships go?
Yeah, wide ranging in all different types of departments, from PR to community relations to the Cleveland Browns Foundation to coaching, to even sometimes a little bit of scouting to equipment. They're wide ranging. They're diverse in their timetables. Sometimes interns are just here for training camp. Sometimes they're full year. Sometimes they're seasonal. It seems like since I've been there, there's a ton of people who are here. The Browns do a great job of trying to invest in young people, give young people opportunities. And so I could not do it justice with the amount of internships and entry-level opportunities that are out there. I would encourage young people to scour Teamworks. I do know that's a platform that we use for a few postings, to scour LinkedIn whenever they're post. If you're interested in coaching or scouting, leverage the league office with the Bill Nunn 2021 inductee, his scouting fellowship, the Nunn Wooten Scouting Fellowship. That's one. The Bill Walsh coaching fellowship is another entry level kind of internship, if you will, depending on where your local market is. That's an opportunity. I know we have some Bill Walsh fellows with us here in Cleveland. And so really explore and look what's out there, because there's not one, there's not two, there's not even 5. There's a lot that teams offer. And so it really just takes some digging.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We can't spoon feed all the answers. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of your own research.
Yeah.
But we'll do our best, and if you connect and we can point you in the right direction, we'd love to do that, whether it's us here at the Hall or it's Tyler with the Browns. I'm sure he'd do the same. But I would encourage you guys as students, to look for those opportunities, look for those networking opportunities. If you're interested in operations, connect with somebody, like Tyler. If you're interested in coaching, start looking for some of those people that you can maybe connect with and ask questions to. But really, I want to say thank you, Tyler. I know Jake probably has a question or two left for you, but I think I'm off the camera for the rest of the show. But thank you for joining us so much here on Before the Snap. But I'm going to send it back to Jake for another question or two to finish things up.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Yes, Tyler, we got one more question for you here. And this is the question we end every program with. If you've watched the program before, you probably can tell already what's coming. But the question is, we've talked a lot about a lot of great stuff today, entry-level positions, internships, networking, how to find that job, skills to have to make you the best that you can be. But if you can sum everything up we talked about today, one last piece of advice. So that key piece of advice you want everybody who tuned in to watch today to take away from the program, what is that one piece of advice?
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat and give 2.
Okay, that's fine.
So
we'll allow it.
The first is obviously follow what you love. You have to love this game to get into it. This game is bigger than any individual person. It was here before you. It will be here after you. You have to love this game to get into it. And I really think that's important, and that can be easily overlooked, because I understand the glitz and glamour of getting into sports, of having an NFL opportunity. But this is an emotional game. A lot of people put in a lot of work. And when you kind of step through the door, having a little bit of that perspective can go a long way to understanding your role and being able to do your job. I think the second piece of advice that I would want to give young people is really embrace the idea of a growth mindset. Really embrace the idea that every single interaction or opportunity is an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to grow. Not every single one is supposed to be a home run, a knock out of the park. But there are a lot of things in my life, in my experience with the Browns, in my other professional experiences, and my experiences in college. At the time, I got down on a lot, but I think it's super valuable to reframe and look and try to think about, what are my weaknesses? What did come out of that opportunity that I'm not so happy about? What did come out of that interaction with that person, even if it's not a job? How can I leverage that going forward? How can I learn from these experiences and these interactions? Because I do think in the long run, that matters a whole lot, and you'll get a whole lot back, and you'll be better off from it. And that's like a hard lesson that I had to learn through a little bit of ups and downs in my career.
Great advice. With that, we're going to
Cool.
wrap up this latest installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series. Today, featuring our special guest, Tyler Hamblin, coordinator of football operations with the Cleveland Browns. Tyler, again, to echo what Nathan said, thank you so much for being a part of the program. I know we're in the off season now, but for you, that's probably when drafts right around the corner, things are starting to pick up. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be a part of the program. Now, before we leave everybody today, just a couple quick announcements. Make sure you're tuning in to all the social media channels here at the Hall of Fame, and I'll plug the Cleveland Browns as well. Here at the Hall of Fame, we just announced our class of 2021. Tyler referenced it, Bill Nunn from the Pittsburgh Steelers being one of them. We're continuing to release these videos on that knock at the door from our president and CEO, Mr. David Baker, who got to travel the country with COVID precautions being taken care of for sure, but to knock on the door of these guys' houses and let them know they're being a member of the Hall of Fame. So make sure you tune in for that, subscribe, like, follow, whatever it might be. And then stay tuned for all the other great stuff we're going to be coming out with here. Next week, February 19th, we have a special guest, Susanna Nickel from the Tennessee Titans, who works in their community relations department. I was going to talk a little bit about her career. So, to wrap things up, I said at the beginning, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today without not only our Gold Jackets influence, but everybody who spends 40, 50, 60, 80 plus hours a week working with the game of football. And Tyler, that obviously is you. It's a 365 day, every day of the year job. So we appreciate all the time that you give to the game of football, and indirectly everything you've done for us here at the Hall of Fame, specifically, being a part of the program today.
For sure. Thank you very much. And to all those watching, I know you said you put my LinkedIn out there. Please connect with me. I would be honored.
All right. With that, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see everybody next time right here on Facebook for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series. Thank you, everybody.